sound check from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My name is Oli Christen-Drew. I'm 48 by now. Yeah, usually I live in Indonesia on a tiny island called Gili Air. And you can say I'm a COVID refugee in the US for almost 2 years until life goes to something back to normal. Yeah. My background is actually pretty much also in education. I've been a teacher already at beginning of university days. I made my my side hustles were always teaching in schools, from school levels, or actually all levels, all the way up to university later on. So what I studied is called industrial psychology. So it's basically psychology applied to business environments, and that includes the development of training and education systems. And it didn't really cut it for me. It was always like, hey, it's an interesting topic, but I never have found a field to apply that until I became a freediver and freedive instructor later on, and I realized like there's an open field for that, to work with agencies and get these education systems to the next level. Like freediving is still a very young sport and education system in general, like worldwide. So it's actually an absolute privilege to be in that moment in freediving, because we're still these pioneer phases that we stand on the shoulder of giants, but we know all the giants personally still. So it's actually quite a fun time to be involved in that.
Awesome. So how did you find freediving?
I got bored being in the tropics and didn't know what to do really with the ocean. Like scuba diving sort of didn't work for me. Never found really the edge in that, or why would you do it? Surfing, I realized, like, just takes so much work. When you live by the sea, then it's a different thing. But when you're just, occasionally by the sea, just to build up the fitness takes so much time and invest so much energy into it. So once I got into a beginner trial, just try out how you feel, how you like it, freediving course, I was like hooked immediately. Like, yeah, that's my purpose of being by the ocean. Like, I knew already I want to live by the sea, but I didn't know what to do there. I mean, I'm from a landlocked country. I'm from Switzerland, so we don't do much of ocean there. So I knew I liked the life there, but I literally didn't know what to do there. And once I got into freediving, I was like, yeah, I want to be a freedive instructor. That's my next step in life.
Okay. So it kind of went, like, once you found it, it was straight to an instructor? Like, I mean, was there like an exploration phase of it? Or?
Oh yeah, I was the worst freedive student you can imagine. Like, I come from a competitive sport background, but in a totally different field. It's called European indoor handball. So yeah, not very commonly known worldwide. So it's sort of soccer, but you play also football, European football, that you play with your hands, 2 teams against each other, and you score goals, and it's by the rules of American football, so very physical, but without any protection. So you have to be quite fit for that, and I realized that's sort of the opposite what you need to be in freediving. You have to be fit as well, or it helps, but the CO2, for example, CO2 tolerance is not really high. You are actually trained that your machines kick on immediately as soon as you start moving. So to find this calmness in it and stillness in freediving, that took me a long time. But I guess that's also the enjoyment that I found immediately in it, that there's something totally new for me to discover. But yeah, every step on that way was like, you can ask my first instructors, they're probably laughing now 12 years later, but yeah, it was, I wouldn't say it was hard. I enjoyed it really, and for that it was not hard, but it was a slow progression for me.
It seems like anybody that does freediving and is able to kind of do it has, like, it affects them deeply, and they seem to go down a hole, or just become obsessed, or I don't know why do you think that is? Like, what do you What do you get out of diving, and what do you think people get out of freediving?
I think everybody that gets into freediving has this similar experience, because I would say freediving is the only performance that I ever met, or you can even say sport that I've seen, where first of all you have to be able to let go to perform, which is sort of the opposite from almost everything else. So I guess it fits very well into also the zeitgeist of like with yoga and meditation and getting to know yourself. I think freediving is probably that one thing that helps the most, or is the most straight, direct access to yourself. Like, you can't fake anything when you are on a breath hold underwater. That's just you, and if you're not comfortable with that, you will not be there for a long time. So I guess that's the appeal for most people, and it was the appeal for me as well. It was like a new world that exactly represented what I was looking for. I was in this high performance sport and business world in Switzerland, and then left that, started traveling, and was looking for something else, and realized there's this whole other world. And I was already 30 years old by then, you know, so realizing that there is a totally different way to approach performance as such was eye-opening and very enjoyable.
Yeah. What advice do you give somebody coming into a dive class, you know, for the first time, coming in fresh and really having no experience of like?
Don't overthink it. Just listen to your instructor, don't sweat it, and enjoy the process. Like, you might be terrible when you start, and still it might be the greatest thing you've ever done. So it has nothing to do with how good you are at it. It's just all that matters is how much joy you get out of it. And if you start with that mindset, you will enjoy it. And I guess that's the best advice. Like, don't watch every YouTube video that you can find, and don't even think you can prepare for that experience. Just experience it. That's what I would say, start with.
A lot of people, I mean, the biggest struggle that people face with diving is equalization. You know, you have a lot of people that come in, they struggle with EQ, and you've got some people that just like that one thing, they're just like, I can't do it. And then some people, you know, stick with it. Any advice do you give to people that are kind of like struggling with that off the bat?
Now we can actually help these people much, much better than we could when I was in the same situation. Again, I was the worst student you can imagine, and that obviously, and of course, also included equalization. I just couldn't equalize. All I could do is go feet first and swallow. That was my only equalization technique. And it took me 4 months of daily work to get to a level that I could do head first dives 20 meters plus. And I did that at home in Switzerland in a landlocked country with pool. And then that's also what I realized, that yeah, you can do every day something for your free diving and enjoying it, even though you can't dive. And then it's like every other thing that you want to improve, you put some work into it. So doing laps in the pool, and even if it's just swimming, doesn't need to be necessarily diving, will improve your situation. So specifically for equalization, back then we had these complicated sort of medical approaches. You need to learn to use all your separate muscles, and nowadays we use these, or my favorite way of explaining equalization, especially the Frenzel equalization, that is sort of the holy grail for the beginner level students. We can do that now with, my favorite way is to use a linguistic approach, and not, you don't need to, or let's say the thinking is this: as we can speak in English or German language, or the languages that I know at least, we use these muscles anyway already that you need for equalization as well. So it's not that we need to learn something totally new, we just have to find the access to that. So what does the soft palate do or so? It does it anyway. If you know that is the soft palate or not is not relevant. So yeah, the linguistic approach is a game changer. It was for me, and it's for also for the, I guess, for teaching, for educators, for instructors. It's a total different world now. We can teach, we can help these students right away, and most of them get it in our, let's say, 70% of the students can be helped in one session, while 10 years ago we were like, yeah, it's going to take you weeks and months, and it's not guaranteed that you will learn it. So.
So for example, like what's a way of linguistic, like?
All right, so how to use a linguistic approach is the thinking is this. In a Frenzel equalization, we, for example, need to know how to apply a tongue lock. A tongue lock means where does the tongue squeeze air in or lock it inside the mouth. The thing is, if you say what you're doing is a lock not with the tongue but with your lips. You're creating pressure and release it. So somebody that is using the sound P in their vocabulary is able to create the P lock, which is one of the 4 locks that we use in freediving. So by creating the pressure and then releasing it, you already create that pressure that you need for equalizing. So if you can combine with exhaling, so if you can do the same sound while being totally exhaled, you're already applying the correct lock, and then you just need to translate that into equalization technique. So that's the same for all other locks, or actually 3 out of 4 locks then the same. It's the same with the T lock. If you can say T on exhale, then it's and that's what the tongue needs to do to apply a T lock, and so on. And for every step of the way, there's a linguistic cue that we can use.
Advice for our instructor trainers, the people you worked with this weekend, like if there's any bit of knowledge or goal that you could give them kind of moving forward from here.
For instructors, the most important thing is to be very precise while doing everything with maximum joy, like how you do it and how the students experience it. It's always a matter of joy. The question is, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, why would you do it? It's really not worth forcing yourself down into cold water if you don't enjoy the process of doing that. So that is sometimes not easy, to be like lighthearted and helping everyone in a way that everyone has the most enjoyable experience, while being quite precise on how you want the things being done. But that's a balance where the instructor should find enjoyment in. And if you enjoy that process, it's like a game that you learn every day new moves. Like, how can I do this? How can I do that? Without being perceived as a sergeant general, drill sergeant, whatever, I think that's the game that, as an instructor, you should start playing. So as a new instructor, go out there, play the game, and the more smiles you see, the better you are at it.
Are there any, specific examples that freediving has affected or changed your life in a good way?
Other than I moved from a landlocked country that is cold and snowy and snowboarding and for skiing to the beach on a tiny island that you can walk around in an hour. It totally changed my life. It's sort of a self-feeding loop, even, I would guess. Like, I started already looking for something like years before I started freediving. I noticed that my life sort of always changes in 7-year cycles. So before it was the performance, indoor sport, team sport, and sort of planning your business career, which was totally enjoyable. It was fun, as long as it lasted. And then it was 7 years of traveling and exploring. Spent out of the next 7 years about 3 to 4 full years not being in Switzerland, like being in Australia or in Southeast Asia, almost everywhere but home. And then when I found freediving, okay, that's what I can do, being on the beach, being in a warm country, working on boats. I like boats for some reason, even though I can't drive really boats, but I love it. And I was like, okay, so it was the gateway, I would say, what I could do, what I enjoy doing, being a totally different environment. And that's where the new journey started. And now 10 years later, I overstayed my welcome, maybe 7 years have passed, so 3 years over already.
All right. What about, I remember you mentioned something about your knees, like.
Oh, that's, yeah. So indoor sports, don't do it. Will take a heavy toll on your body, one way or the other, I would guess. Because the surfaces are so hard, so that any impact will lead to some form of damage. For me, it was the knees. I had 7 knee surgeries in total, of which 4 were actually very heavy ones or big ones. And by the end of that time, I could not really walk a flight of stairs anymore without like feeling pain in both knees. And there was sort of like nothing I could do about it. Like slight training with physiotherapy or so just didn't really change that until I started swimming with fins, or I got into freediving, and because of that, when I was in Switzerland again, the only option was to do dynamic training, and I realized like all of a sudden I could walk up and down stairs again without any pain, and I realized like fin swimming changed that totally for me. It seems to be these tiny movement. It's not the big movement. It's not the getting stronger legs movement. It's the microscopic movements that the leg must stabilize the fin that constantly wants to go sideways and avoid the pressure that you put on it. I guess that made all the difference. And since then, I'm good. I can walk like a normal person, walk up and down stairs. So freediving changed that for me quite nicely.
Okay, you mentioned a couple times handball.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about this.
All right. So how it works, if that would be the pitch in front of you and I flip it up so this way. Here's a goal, here's a goal. Here's one team of 6, here's one team of 6, and there's a goaltender, goalkeeper, a goalie on each side. So, all right, so there's one ball in the game and that team comes over here and the defense stands here against the offense, and they just pass the ball left and right and do moves and whatnot until they have a free shot or shoot over the defense and see if the goalkeeper can get it or not. And then if they score or not, the game goes over here. So it goes forth and back, forth and back. That's handball. It's usually, or it is a very physical sport, because handball has this quite special rule that you can commit a light foul. So your goal is not to actually get the ball, it's to stop the opponent. And that makes the whole thing a little hairy, because then it's up to the refs to define the line. What was a light foul? I stopped you. And when was the foul too hard? So I'm gonna get punished with a 2-minute suspension or a yellow card or whatever. So that makes the whole thing then sometimes a little bit, yes, there's a lot of heated moments in that game, let's put it this way.
Okay. And at what level did you play at? Like, at what age were you playing?
I got in way too late to be like a long-term, like high-level player. I played on the top level in Switzerland for a while, so highest league, and that doesn't mean much because the Swiss league is overseeable. We have now a very good, like right now we have a very good time in Switzerland handball because we have a very good national trainer or national coach who's doing a great job, so, and a good generation of strong players. So now we are actually in the, top 10 maybe of the nations, which is quite a progress, progress compared to 20 years ago when I was in it.
Okay. Awesome. Do you have any video of this? Any video of your
YouTube, go handball. Oh, my career.
You have any video of you? Somewhere in the archives? Somewhere?
I'm pretty sure it must exist, because already back then, even we were maybe not on TV that often, but every team recorded their own games every time, so the coaches could then analyze the moves and games and whatnot. So there must be somewhere, but that was VHS tapes or whatnot. So who knows if that still exists or not? I have no idea.
Wow. If you ever find it, I would love to take a look at this.
Me too.
Break down for me an instructor course. Like if someone's like, all right, what is an instructor course? What are you guys trying to do? Like what do you do? What are you looking for? Like how would you describe to somebody who maybe is interested?
Yeah, so instructor course is basically like every course in Molchanovs is like Lego bricks. I always see it as Lego bricks. So the foundation is always having a very solid theory. And in theory, by theory we mean in an instructor course, everything that is wave 1, wave 2, wave 3 courses must be like super solid in your head. You know that stuff. That also includes, you know, about every skill. So like, what does the Molchanovs duck dive look like, the way that we want to do it? What is the no fins positioning of arms and legs? That should be, in theory, very clear to you. And it's all in there in the books or in the manuals. And that's sort of the first step. And that's then being tested with the entry exam. So there's a short exam which basically checks that. Okay, now let's go to the next step. So now you should know a bit about the theory of how to teach. How do we teach these skills? So you need to know the skills and then how to teach. And there's a teaching system implied in that. And that's sort of the next step. That's the theory classes or the theory Lego block of the instructor course. That is about 20 hours of work that you need to put into that. Then on top of that is everything in the pool. So all the skills, then actually teach them in the pool and demonstrate all the disciplines. So basically in the pool you do static, dynamic no fins, dynamic with bifins and dynamic monofin technique. You should be able to demonstrate it in a reasonable, good level. So students that watch you go like, oh yeah, I get it. That's how it should look like. Plus every skill you should be very comfortable with applying that teaching system that you learned down here in every skill. So how to teach, I don't know, neutral buoyancy check for a dynamic dive, right? And when you mastered that part, then you're already a pool instructor. And then you can go on, and the last Lego brick on top of that would then be the same thing for open water. So every skill for the wave 1, wave 2 course, discuss it through, teach it to your mock students or your colleagues basically on the course. Go through that, and there's again the disciplines that you can demonstrate everything in a reasonable, beautiful, accomplished manner. If you get all that together, that would be then the last brick, and you have the full wave certification as an instructor. And that's, I guess, a bit the beauty of it, that it doesn't mean you have to do everything in one go in a training camp of 10 days in one place. You can do a piece here, a part there, and so on, and when you piece it together, then you get on the way your certifications. And I guess that's a bit of the future of freediving is in that you don't maybe want to go necessarily for weeks and months to a different place. You can do that, that's fine, and it's maybe ideal if you can do that, but not everybody has this option. So if you want to start from where you are, the first 2 bricks can be done online. You don't need to go anywhere. We do this every instructor trainer of Molchanovs can do this online. And that's what's been heavily used, especially now in quite special times of a pandemic. People sit at home and study and do dry skills, and it works. So, yeah.
Okay. Freediving is pretty young, you know, it's progressed rapidly, you know, so maybe just like touch on that and then just say, yeah, what is the future of freediving?
I think we have to make a distinction between freediving as a competitive sport and freediving as a recreational activity. So what I'm mainly involved with is the recreational activity. I think freediving can contribute so much to what the world needs, to put it this way. You don't need to be a strong freediver, but it's about, you should be able to relax. You should be able to calm your mind. And these are essential qualities which, in my opinion, should be taught in school, like meditation. Relaxation techniques should be taught to kids in school, just like math or physics or biology. Unfortunately, it's not the case, but there's programs out there that actually do exactly that. Try to implement it on very early school levels. Freediving can contribute so much to that. Also, when you start freediving in the ocean or even in a lake or so, and you are getting in this very primal contact with nature, like you are part of that. You are there like a seal that is diving or a dolphin. They just do it much better than us, but in the end they also take a breath and dive down there and do something or see something. You get a totally different approach to how do you experience nature. And then you realize like we are nature. When we protect nature, we're not protecting nature as something out there, we're protecting ourselves. Without that thinking, without that understanding, we don't have a future. We're not going anywhere. We have 50 more years on this planet and we're done. So, and I think freediving can contribute a lot to that understanding. And it sort of happens to everyone that starts freediving. So yeah, we should have everyone doing a freedive course compulsory before you're 20 years old. So that's the recreation part of freediving. In the competitive part of freediving, I think that's getting super exciting in the next years. And now we have the first generation of really strong overall athletes that just happen to pick freediving as their sport, or maybe one of their sports. But these are like the professional level athletes that they could just as well be, I don't know, a rock climber, and they would be, you know, top level there, or I don't know, free skier or so, and they would be top in that. So we see now such guys, or by guys I mean girls and boys, getting into freediving, and it's just unbelievable what the performance level that they are on. So combine that with then kids that grow up in water, that are, you know, we have now the first generation of kids of freedivers that are diving to depths in open water when they're 7 years old that I can't even reach or something. You know, and when they then become freedivers, which happens now, it's just mind-blowing what these athletes can do. So I expect that what we see now is just the start, just the beginning of a much more like broader competitive field that comes up in the next year. Given that we can further professionalize that part of freediving, that the whole organization of competitions, the finances that come with it, safety procedures, media work, and so this has to pick up, or the professionalism of that has to grow rapidly in the next year or two. Then it's going to be very exciting.
So like taking a piece of that, so you're saying that freediving isn't just for like adrenaline junkie, thrill seeker athletes?
I guess there's a lot of that. There's a lot of thrill seekers and adrenaline junkies in freediving and spearfishing especially, until they do their first real freedive course. And then they realize there's something much bigger in it. It's simple. If you do any form of freediving, spearfishing or whatever, with that goal, as a thrill seeker, you're only going to get that far. Either you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to have an accident, you get killed, whatever, or you're not progressing, because that's not how it works. And there's sort of a self-cleansing mechanism in that those who approach freediving with the wrong mindset, they will either get hurt and stop, or stop anyway because it's not fun, not much fun. So yeah, I'm not so much worried about the thrill seekers in freediving. It's quite the opposite what freediving is, obviously, and those few who do it for thrill-seeking reasons, they will go away again.
It's just been really cool, funny, like our meetups and our groups, you know, there is no like freediver type of person. Like we have the craziest mixing pot of personalities and people from like all over the spectrum, you know, and it's cool how, you know, all of us would never normally get together and hang out, but like freediving has just brought such a wild mixture of people together, and we all have such a good time together.
Yeah, that's what I see wherever I go. That's now my privilege, that I can travel around here, and I've been to many places meeting these groups of free divers, and it's so almost hilarious how you find these pockets of hippies everywhere you go. Like free divers have always these groups, and it's so relaxed and chill, and there's no competitiveness around it. And then in certain groups there is this competitiveness, and I go like, that's weird. And then you realize like they just come from a different walk of life and have different goals and whatever, but those groups that sort of feel right and feel good, that's the ones where you have this hippie feeling of, yeah, I know it's early morning, Saturday morning, and cold and windy, but hey, it's great to be here. Like, okay, and now we're gonna jump in the ocean. It's even colder there, and everybody's happy doing that. Reminds me a lot actually of when it was a good powder day, when you meet friends to go snowboarding. That's the same, like you meet like on the first train in the morning, like who goes on a train at 5:30 on Sunday morning? Like, yeah, those guys who are ready to also hike up a mountain for hours then, and for a downhill ride of 20 minutes or 5 minutes sometimes. And you're like, why would you do that? Well, if you're part of it, then you know why you do it, and if you have to ask the question, you're not gonna do it probably.
I don't know, I guess I feel like the most common thing I hear when you like tell people about freediving is like, oh, it's just like so dangerous, I can't do that. Like how dangerous is freediving?
Yeah, knowledge is safety in freediving, that's for sure. Like you need to know what you're doing, and then you need to be trained. In the beginning you need an instructor to train you to a certain level until you can do it yourself. But the important thinking is that for everything you learn, you also learn to be a buddy, and you learn to be a rescue free diver or safety in that same level. And as long as you combine that knowledge with always free at least 2 guys together, and knowledge includes like, should I even go diving today, or is today not the day because currents, waves, temperature changes, whatever, jellyfish in the bay. It is probably the safest thing I did in my life, and I did a lot of sports, but the thing is you don't need to push anything to a level that is maybe unsafe. There's no reason for that. So injuries happen when you should maybe have checked your ego first. You have to learn this skill of mindfulness, that you realize what's going on around you and within you. So if you feel the slightest discomfort or so, that you maybe not reacting on it immediately, but you become aware of it. Is this a problem, or is it not a problem? Can I solve it? Can I not solve it? And so on. That you're not doing something reckless and then an injury happens. So yeah, injuries happen then when you're not paying attention basically to yourself. And I guess that's part of what we learn there. So in my experience, I have seen very, very few accidents in freediving in 10 plus years now. And I wouldn't even call it accident. I never had to perform not a single rescue in my life for real. Like, yeah, maybe somebody falls unconscious at the surface, which is not a rescue in that sense, because it's 5 seconds later, it's over, and then you analyze it, what went wrong, and you always find that reason was somewhere in lack of attention, and you move on. You learn from the mistake and you move on. So in that sense, no, freediving, if you do it the right way, if you learn to do it the right way, is a very safe activity.
And I mean, you basically kind of covered it, but like, I can't tell you how many people are like, I'm a spearfisher, I've been doing this for 10 years, like I know what I'm doing, like I don't need to take a class, I have no problem diving to 20 meters, and why would I take a class?
Yeah, the thing is, we know now that freedivers always die alone, no exception. except from one incident in competitive freediving, which is like knock on wood, just one where a freediver died. Every other freediver that I know of at least died alone, because something went so badly wrong that either he was alone from the beginning or during the session or whatever. Spearfisher, I get it that experience goes a long way. If somebody has been a spearfish for 10 years, there's a good chance that that person knows what they're doing, one way or the other, be it through theory or experience themselves. The problem is this self-selection process also happens in that situation, that some actually get hurt or die, and well, then you have sort of a survival bias in the statistics, that those who have been doing it for 10 years, yeah, that's the one who survived. What happened? What about all the other ones? I would not look at it from a safety perspective for spear fishermen that have been doing it also for a long time. I would look at it from a performance and enjoyment perspective. It's with great technique, everything you do is much easier. And with no exception, every experienced freediver, we had freedivers in our school, they've been freediving for 20 plus years and spearfishing and everything until they decide, hey, I want to become an instructor. And then we straightened out the technique and worked with them for weeks and sometimes months. And it opened up like a new world for them as well, like how easy this all can be compared to how they experienced it in the past. So that should be the motivator, in my opinion. Like the better you are on your technical level, knowledge level, the easier whatever you want to do will become. We can talk about human nature of risk appetite. It's not going to make them necessarily safer, because every human has a certain tolerance for risk, and if you get better in your knowledge and technique and procedures, and that perceived risk gets smaller, there's a good chance that they will just increase the dose of risk. So I don't think the primary motivator for experienced watermen and women is safety. They know what they're doing. The motivator is like, you will do what you do now in a much higher level with more enjoyment. I work with that approach mainly.
Yeah. You've worked with other agencies, you've been in this a long time. What do you have to say about the Molchanovs name and like what they're doing? And
what blew me away when I got involved with Molchanovs, when I met the crew around Alexei, was basically two things. It's mainly that approach of freediving is not course, and then you're done. It's basically when you are a freediver, be it from the first day until instructor, you sort of you want to do something every day. So you can call it training or whatever. So in Molchanovs it's called base training, but this idea that you can do every day something, and is it just a breathing exercise or an equalization exercise that you do at home in your bed, or you do a awareness exercise, attention deconcentration, whatever. You can continue with pool training, or if you're so lucky and you have open water training access, you do open water training, but you want to do every day something. And Molchanovs follows that approach. The courses are just in between your daily activities to get you to the next level, your next skills level, basically. Every course gives you a new bag of skills, and then you work with these skills, and then you go to maybe somewhere down the road to the next course, and you work with these skills. But it's this approach that freediving happens every day. That's exactly how it is in life, and that's what I love about it, that Molchanovs takes care of that. You do that as a worldwide community, everybody gets the same programs, and you can exchange your results and have fun together. And so this is just really cool, this approach. This is one thing that I find very attractive with it. The other one is freediving, as we discussed earlier, is evolving really fast. It develops in a speed that, let's say if you write something down, this is how it is. If that paper is older than 2 years, you can assume that paper is outdated. It's like, that's not how it is anymore now. So having up-to-date knowledge and material and people to work with as well, like those guys that are involved in Molchanovs, that's the guys who are like at the forefront of the development of freediving. And then put that into the education system, and every 2 years it has to be renewed. That's such a crucial part of it, because sometimes it feels like freediving is like a train that is accelerating, going fast and faster, and you just have to hold on for dear life to it to keep up with that speed. That maybe it's not getting faster and faster, but it's definitely going, that train. And that's, I would say, the second part of it that I really love about the system. It's challenging. That's exactly what puts the work pile on the table never gets smaller. There's always new coming in, and you just are working on one end. And but hey, again, that's the privilege of being in that time in freediving, where everything is changing so quickly, and everybody can find their niche in this.
Beautiful.
Yeah, love it. Good.